Yeah. Once you put the fence around it, you have to give it a label. You said, this is Oromia. This is Somali region. This is this. So let's assume. So let's assume that we are Somalis. What makes you a Somali? Okay, Somali baan ku hadla. I speak Somali. My parents are Somali. Okay? What else makes you Somali? Outside sitting in that fenced area. What makes you Somali? Did Allah say you are Somali? No. Did the Prophet say you are Somali? No. Did they say you are Oromo, you are Amara, you are this or that? No. So once you put the fence, then you put a label and say these are the people. So Somalis, we assume, we believe, we don't think, but we assume and we believe that we are one people. Okay, Somalis. We are different from the Oromos. We are different from the Swahilis in Kenya and elsewhere, Kikuyus and others, Maasai. Okay. So once we accepted the fence and we accepted the label, then the question is, what comes back to haunt us is, Ismael Samater wa Samaron, Isaaq waa dhalay, yeah, laakiin si doqon buu noqdo, kuwoogina wuu diiday, hoosta wuxuu ka galaa baa la yidhi kuwa abtiyadii, yeah, so I'm supposed to buy into that, yeah, kuwii adeeradayna waxay leeyihiin, yeah, niyo waxbaa ka siiyan ninkan, yeah, somehow there's something wrong with him because he doesn't quite see the way we see. Ama ogaadeen ahaw, ama sheekhaal ahaw, ama shaytaan ahaw, it's all the same. So not good. And so now we are living in this fenced area. The trouble is that, yes, Oromos are different than us, maybe. We have to live with one another. Yeah? Even the nomads have to cooperate in terms of securing the water for their animals, in terms of securing grazing for their livestock, and so on and so forth. But once you go beyond the simple reproduction of a family, and you are creating a community called Somalis, okay? Then the question is, you and I are supposed to be the same. But now we have a university. We have a capital called Jigjiga. Who is going to be running the show? What happened to the commonalities that we shared? That we are the same people. Okay? And so his guys follow him. I don't know who he is, but I'm just assuming that's the case. Wrong or right? Okay. Okay. And so the question then becomes, if we think we know one another, what unites us and what divides us? And how do we decide how to share the things that we have collectively? How do we share the grass for our livestock, the water for our livestock, the schools for our children, the hospitals for our ill people? How do we share that? Should we give preference to certain groups versus other groups? Then what happens to the commonalities that we have had? Okay? So what I'm going to suggest is the following then. The creation of identity. You are a Somali, you can be an Ethiopian. You are a Somali, you can be in the Republic. You are a Somali, you can be in Djibouti. You are a Somali, can be in Kenya. But national identity, communal identity, is more than what your genealogy tells you. What your genealogy tells you. It's more than that. So the question becomes, if we share a language, the Oromos, let's say, they share a language. The folks who live on the western part of the country in Oromia and the folks who live in Babili, what do they have in common? Okay? These guys are not going to move west, those guys are not going to move east, but they are the same people. So the question becomes, our collective identity, culturally speaking, so that comes out of culture. how do you then transform that cultural identity, the language, the nomadic culture, the poetry, Islam, and so on and so forth? How do you transform that into a collective identity where we have equality with one another? Okay, where we have equality with one another. That requires a leap from saying this is a bottle. So, we live in Jigjiga. Majority are Somalis, I assume. Okay. It's not? Next. Okay, that's all right. It's okay. That's fair enough. I mean, the university is different from the town. I am talking about the town, right? And so the question becomes, now if we are going to have this other identity, national identity, let's say in the Somali region, okay? In the old days, my father was a nomad, my mother was a nomad. They take care of their animals, occasionally share the grass with other people and the water wells. Now we have built schools, we are building roads, we are building hospitals, we are building businesses, we are building enterprises. How are we going to sort of share that becomes the question. Should we use that, the horrible formula that comes from Somalia, 4.5, and so Hawiye, Darod, Hawiye, Dir, Iyo, Rahanwein, Iyo, others. Look at how ugly that is. They are others. What are the animals? Hell no. Okay? But it's the political guys who manufactured that. They told us, you are Hawiye, you are Dir, you are Darod. And we said, yes, MashaAllah. Okay? So the cultural identity we shared gets balkanized, broken into these categories. So rather than elevating it to a higher level, we actually diminish it so that we can go down. Because now the head of the university and I become, he's a horse, I'm a donkey. So when horse and donkeys sort of a mate, they produce a mule. Bakal bekena sama. And bakashu mataranto. Bakal mules don't reproduce. Okay? So our fate as people is going to be the fate of the mule. Because we have refused to rise up to a higher level, we have sunk to a lower level. Okay? Because we did not think critically about what those guys were telling us as to who we are. So here in Jigjiga, in the Somali region, how are we going to rise up out of those divisions which have balkanized the large commonalities, cultural commonalities we had? So what I'm going to suggest is the following, and then I will conclude so that we have time for questions and other things. How do you then transform old cultural commonalities to new national commonalities, what I call citizenship? Okay? There are new challenges, obstacles that you have to skip over to reach the promised land. Okay? So let me tell you a story about my family as a way to give you tangible existential experience. My parents had a small farm. When I was in grade 1, first year in primary school, they used to harvest about 43 sacks of millet and beans. Every year they will farm in the spring, and then in the autumn, in September and October, they will harvest. Grade 1, I remember, they had 43 sacks from that small farm. By the time I finished high school, my father was already late. My mother had 2 sacks from the same area, same plot of land. The rains didn't change that much. There was no locust or other pestilence, but somehow the productivity of the farm got reduced from 43 to 2 or 3. What does that tell me? That my parents, wonderful human beings they were, loving parents they were, I will cherish them the day until I die. Okay? But they were human beings. And they did not put anything back into the soil to keep up its fertility. Okay? So literally what they were doing, everybody in the region was doing the same thing, right here in Jigjiga. You are mining the soil and putting nothing back to regenerate its fertility. Okay? So here's the rub. Our cultural commonalities is exactly like that soil in my parents' farm. حبين وداقنا داقن بين نسكن نهاي ولا علينا النهاي ولا ودواليه. Okay? Yeah? The question is, when we became in sort of a regional state, and in the republic when it became independent, what did we put back into those cultural commonalities to create a much richer soil so that its productivity will continue to produce more and more and more and more? Instead, we chased the British in the Republic, we chased the Italians in sort of in the South, created a union there. Yeah. We chased away all imperialists here, the ones that used to check us in the sort of a Jibri here in the customs. Okay, now we are on our own. Yeah. So you said to yourself, rather than putting more into that to make it richer, yeah, you want to extract it. أنكو عطانو نهاي سعد موسى محاد ولد النوجر. أنكو عطانو نهاي إذا قال محاد النوجر. هي عبد الله عطانو نهاي تولد محانو كهلنا. You are extracting things from that rather than investing in it so that it gets better. Okay? They are doing that in Mogadishu. They are doing that in Hargeisa. They are doing that in Djibouti and everywhere else. And they are doing that right here, despite my friend Mustafa as being the president of the region here, and the efforts that he is making to reform that. Okay? So what do you do then to put something back? So the first thing, if you are the leaders of the town and the region, future leaders of the state, the first step is to think about how can we add value to what our parents left here. In what form is that going to take? So let me get a little bit more political now. Okay, maybe the politicians will get a little antsy and unsettled a bit. Professors are, iska hadlaan moogta. Ilaahay baa laga baqdaa, cid kale laga baqdo. Waana saaxiibaday waay. Let's assume we have created a government here. Mustafa, bless him, is struggling with that. I saw him in Addis Ababa last night. He was exhausted. He's exhausted because hareeraha la jiidanaya, waa la xaganaya. I'm not gonna. Aniga contract. See, give me a contract. I'm your cousin. I am your in-law. I am this. I am that. Sida loo xaganaya maalinta dambe marada laga xayuubin doona. Which means you also will be naked. So what do we put back? So here's the final thing. I divide people into 4 categories. Okay?